Hey, it's me. Now, there's two books that I'd like to recommend any Christian to buy. Now, these are not essential by any means, but if you want to learn more about your faith and increase your understanding about God, about the book of Genesis, about the lives of Adam and Eve, for example, then I would buy this, The Forgotten Books of Eden. Okay, let me give you a bit of a close-up of that. I'm not sure how well you can see it, but the book is called The Forgotten Books of Eden. And let me read the back of this for you, okay? The Lost Books of the Bible, with 32 illustrations from ancient paintings and missals, okay? Now it says, the documents in this book were written soon after Christ's crucifixion during the early spread of Christianity. But when the Bible was compiled in the end of the 4th century, these texts were not among those chosen. They were suppressed by the church and for over 1500 years were shrouded in secrecy. These writings are by and about many of the important figures in the New Testament. They express much the same zeal and earnestness about this subject as do the pieces in the New Testament. And yet, until they were translated in this century, they were the peculiar esoteric property of the clergy and other learned people, available only in the original tongues, okay? We can now judge these texts for ourselves. We see much more here of Jesus as a child than we do in the New Testament. Peter and Nicodemus, who were so close to Jesus, give us their versions of his life. There is an account of Mary's life before Christ's birth, and there are several that supplement our knowledge about the early Christians and the spread of Christianity. So what I'm saying is this: what are you waiting for? If you call yourself a Christian, read up on your faith and your beliefs and increase your knowledge, okay? And this book is absolutely fascinating. It actually talks about how Adam and Eve tried to get back into the Garden of Eden after they were cast out. It goes on about how Adam and Eve went through their first hunger pains, how they had a cave that they had to live in after they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden. It's absolutely fascinating, this book. If you call yourself a true Christian, then definitely read the Lost Books of the Bible, because Adam and Eve are the two original people. You know, they are. You know, they were around about approximately 13 to 15,000 years ago. Okay, and obviously this doesn't. I don't think it goes over pre-Adamic civilizations that the fallen angels had. You see, as I've touched upon in previous videos, the angels of God did have civilizations on this earth before the fall of Lucifer, and indeed after the fall of Lucifer, they still had those civilizations. So all of that old history had to be wiped out by God, which is why in Genesis it's written that the earth was formless and void, and there was darkness on the face of the deep. If you read Genesis properly, you'll realise that the earth was in a state of chaos when God decided to create everything again anew for the sake of the first man and the first woman. Okay, and it's absolutely fascinating. And of course, before the events of Genesis, that obviously, we're talking about the civilizations of God's angels. They are people, angels are, and they had to live in worlds just like the way we are today. Anyway, enough about that. There's so much more to history than what we're taught. There's so much more to this world and Earth's history, and a lot of mankind's history is intertwined with that of the angels and their influence, both the good influence and the bad influence, depending on whether they were the good angels or the bad ones, right? Anyway, definitely buy The Forgotten Books of Eden. And it's absolutely fascinating. If you want to know the true history of your origins, buy this book, okay? And of course, read the book of Genesis, which is basically a simplified version. There are parts of this book that are far more extrapolated on in comparison to the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis doesn't go deep into the details of the lives of Adam and Eve. This book does. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. And this book here, The Lost Books of the Bible, the Great Rejected Texts, definitely buy this one. It's a brilliant book. Now let me read the back of it for you. Now, Section 1, Lost Scriptures of the Old Testament. the first book of Adam and Eve, the second book of Adam and Eve, the first book of Enoch, the second book of Enoch, Jubilees, Jasher, and the story of Ahakiah. Well, I'm not sure how to pronounce that name. It's there. I don't know if you can see it. It's Ahikar. I can't pronounce it for the life of me. Section 2, Apocalyptic Writings in the End of Days, Apocalypse of Abraham, Apocalypse of Thomas, 4 Ezra, 2 Baruch, and War Scrolls, Sons of Dark versus Sons of Light, okay? And section 3 is the Lost Scriptures of the New Testament, right? That's the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of, I think it's Mary Magdalene, the Apocryphon of John, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Judas, and Acts chapter 29. All right, and this one was written by a Joseph B. Lumpkin, okay? Just so you can see that again, yeah. I'm not sure how well you can see it with my Kindle Fire 8, anyway. These 2 books will transform your understanding of what's written in the Bible, and it would increase your faith tremendously. These 2 books here, definitely buy them. You call yourself a Christian, increase your knowledge, because God's people perish for a lack of knowledge. And remember how I've mentioned at odd times about the sword of truth? I was deadly serious, because God doesn't not want his people to live in ignorance about the origins of mankind, especially about the book of Genesis, because the book of Genesis is one of the most misunderstood parts of the Bible, because if Genesis is misinterpreted and just seen as being metaphorical rather than literal, it is literal but simplistically written. It was written in a way that could be understood by future generations, because the intelligence of mankind, because of sin, because of the degeneration of our minds and bodies and our relationship with God, how it's all gone downhill. Because of that, God knew that the book of Genesis had to be written in a way that was simple, that people could understand, and yet still completely and utterly accurate and truthful. So in other words, you can forget about millions of years of evolution and all that crap. There's a lot more to this world's history, and indeed the worlds and the planets that are in our solar system than what we're led to believe, okay? And if you don't think that NASA and the government are covering things that they are, they've been covering things up for years and years and years. There are things on Mars that you don't want to know about. There are structures on Mars, the planet Mars, that you don't want to know about, okay? And there's all sorts going on that we don't understand, but definitely buy these books. And bear in mind that this solar system and this planet doesn't just have mankind's history. It has the history and civilizations of God's angels, both the good and the bad, after the fall of Satan and before the fall of Satan. Don't forget that God's angels had civilizations throughout the solar system and even on this earth, okay, before the creation of Adam and Eve. And they knew that Adam and Eve were going to be created, so you've got to bear that in mind, you know. And of course, it was because of Satan's jealousy and envy. He envied Jesus, and he envied and was jealous of his plans to make mankind beings made after God's image and likeness. Okay, and Lucifer wanted to do the same thing. He hated it. He didn't want to play second fiddle to God, in other words. He wanted to be a God in his own right. And that's why everything happened with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. As I've said before, it's absolutely fascinating, these 2 books. Buy them and read them. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye and take care.